Imagine a grand hotel lobby late at night. A legendary celebrity arrives discreetly, only to encounter a confrontation that could shake the entire hospitality industry. What really happened, and what secrets were revealed? Stick around, because this is one story you won't want to miss. Where are you watching from? Share in the comments below, and don't forget to hit subscribe for more inspiring stories like this one. Welcome to the Motivation for Success channel, where we bring you real-life tales that show how a single act of courage can create a ripple effect of change. Got your own inspiring story? Post it in the comments. We'd love to share it with the world. Now, let's dive into this unforgettable story. It was close to midnight when Keanu Reeves walked through the revolving glass doors of the Horizon Skylark Hotel. He wore a simple dark blazer over a slightly wrinkled t-shirt, carrying himself with the kind of calm confidence that hinted at a long day's work. The lobby was a pristine expanse of polished marble, subdued lighting, and tasteful green accents. Outside, the city lights glittered like fallen stars, but here, in the hush of the nearly empty lobby, everything felt expectant, on the brink of a momentous occasion. Keanu was here on a mission. He had recently acquired this luxury hotel in a quiet business deal that very few staff members knew about. Instead of grand ribbon cuttings or celebrity-studded announcements, he preferred to observe how his property functioned under normal, everyday circumstances. No fanfare, no special treatment, just honest experiences. He took a moment to let his eyes drift around the lobby's modern artwork, the gleaming chandelier overhead, and the large potted plants arranged with meticulous care. A faint classical tune played over the speakers, gentle violins providing a serene soundtrack. Near the far corner of the reception desk, a focused employee in a crisp black uniform arranged white lilies in a tall crystal vase. According to his name tag, his name was Cameron. He handled each flower with deliberate grace, as though placing every petal were an art form. Keanu recalled the advice he'd once received from a friend: the smallest tasks often show a person's true character. This moment of careful flower arranging lingered in Keanu's mind. Cameron finished setting the lilies in place and offered Keanu a welcoming smile. "Good evening, sir. Checking in?" Keanu nodded, eventually replying and returning the smile. "Might just sit down for a moment." "Long day?" "Of course," Cameron said, his tone respectful. "Please let me know if you need any assistance." Keanu found a secluded leather armchair in a softly lit corner of the lobby. He settled in, releasing a quiet sigh. He was exhausted, having spent the day juggling multiple business calls, an impromptu charity event, and a quick flight into town. Still, something had drawn him here tonight. A gut feeling told him he had to see the place for himself, unobtrusively, before making any grand statements as its new owner. A few minutes later, a couple emerged from the elevator. They seemed to be in their early 40s. Morgan wore an expensive blazer, and Elena sported a sleek cocktail dress with glittering earrings. By their expressions, they had clearly indulged in an evening of high-end dining, and perhaps a bit too much wine. Their loud conversation echoed across the sparse lobby. "It's unbelievable how these places keep lowering their standards," Elena complained, pressing her manicured nails against her temple. "Even the five-star restaurants here aren't what they used to be." Morgan nodded gravely, as though they were discussing a crisis of epic proportions. "I remember when Horizon Skylark had the best reputation in town. Now, I'm not so sure." Keanu remained in his chair, one leg crossed over the other, pretending not to notice them. But it was impossible not to notice the couple as they glided up to Cameron, who was still behind the front desk, finishing up tasks for the evening. "You," Elena said, her tone clipped. "We had room service earlier." "Ridiculous. I'd like to speak to whoever is really in charge here." Cameron arched an eyebrow, maintaining an air of calm professionalism. "I'm the senior desk attendant tonight, ma'am. How can I help you?" Elena's lips drew into a thin line. "I'm not sure you can help. Is there someone else available?" A sharp tension filled the air. Keanu's jaw tightened. He recognized the subtle menace lurking behind Elena's words, an unspoken suggestion that a well-dressed man behind the counter might be acceptable, but Cameron, for some reason, felt short in her eyes. Cameron's knuckles widened slightly against the desk, but his voice stayed measured. Our night manager is off property right now, however, I can certainly address any concerns you may have. Morgan gave a dismissive snort. We'd rather wait. Let's just say we were expecting a more appropriate representative to handle our complaint. Keanu could almost feel the hostility swirling in the air. He remembered countless moments in his own life when people made assumptions about him based on appearance, whether it was during his early acting days or when he rode the subway to keep a low profile. That familiar heat rose in his chest. Part of him wanted to step in immediately to reveal that he owned this place, but experience taught him that when people felt unobserved by authority, they often showed their truest colors. So, he stayed put, quietly observing. I assure you, Cameron said, his expression resolutely polite, I'm fully capable of resolving any issues you have with room service. We aim for the highest standards here at the Horizon Skylark. Elena looked Cameron up and down, sizing him up. The place has gone downhill, if you ask me. Morgan stepped forward, voice low but audibly condescending. We're loyal patrons, you know. We've been coming here for a decade. The previous owners always knew how to keep things in order. He paused, then spoke more bluntly. Are you new? Cameron opened his mouth, then shut it again. A flicker of anger or hurt flashed across his face. I've been with this hotel for 5 years, sir. Elena gave a short laugh. Really? I suppose that says a lot about how the management has changed. Keanu watched Cameron inhale slowly, steadying himself. Despite the couple's barbed words, he maintained composure. Please let me know how I can make things right. Morgan's expression hardened. How about we speak to an actual manager tomorrow, one who understands our expectations? We'll be filing a formal complaint about you specifically and about the poor level of service overall. Cameron simply nodded. Of course. I'll note your concerns and pass them along immediately. If there's nothing else I can do. Oh, you've done enough, Elena spat, turning on her heel toward the elevator. Morgan cast Cameron one last glare and followed. As the couple's footsteps faded, Cameron's shoulders slumped ever so slightly. Yet, he returned to reorganizing the desk, meticulously adjusting sign-in sheets and rechecking the hotel's bookings, routine tasks that offered no comfort from the sting of the couple's insults. Keanu remained in his corner, unsettled. His heart pounded with mingled anger and empathy. That was discrimination, plain and simple. He'd encountered enough prejudice in his travels, both subtle and overt, to recognize it immediately. He felt the moral tug to stand up for Cameron right then, to show the couple the consequences of their behavior. But something told him the night wasn't over. The tension in the air felt like a coiled spring ready to snap again. And snap it did. Not an hour later, the elevator chimed. Elena and Morgan reappeared, this time in expensive robes with hotel slippers, apparently too riled up to sleep. Elena's cheeks were flushed, anger radiating from her like heat from a furnace. Morgan clutched his phone, its screen brightness reflecting in the dim lights. You again, Elena said, pointing at Cameron. It's freezing in our suite. We tried adjusting the thermostat ourselves, but it's obviously broken. I'm done. Let us speak to someone else who can fix this now. Cameron glanced at the clock on the wall. It was past 1 a.m. I'm sorry about the temperature. I can dispatch our maintenance team immediately or move you to an upgraded room if you'd. Don't you dare talk down to us. Morgan snarled, brandishing his phone. I've already documented your entire attitude earlier tonight. We've posted it online. Thousands of people have seen it. You'll regret ever acting like you belong here. Keanu felt adrenaline surge in his veins. They had posted some sort of hateful rant, no doubt. The moral outrage that had been simmering finally reached a boiling point. Slowly, he stood up and approached the desk. This time, he wouldn't stay silent. As Keanu walked into the light, Elena spun around. For a fleeting second, he caught the flicker of recognition in her eyes. Her gaze darted over his face, and then her mouth formed a small O of surprise. Morgan took a step back, blinking in shock. "Keanu Reeves? What are you doing here?" Morgan stammered. Keanu gave a polite nod. "I was here for a quiet stay, but I seem to have witnessed quite a scene." A hush fell for a moment. The only sound was the gentle classical music playing overhead and the distant hum of the hotel's heating system. Cameron stared at Keanu, obviously surprised to see him talking directly to the irate couple. Elena tried to collect herself. "We didn't realize we've been guests here for so long. We didn't mean anything by. You posted about him online?" Keanu interjected, gesturing to Cameron. He kept his tone calm, almost dangerously so. "I'd like to see that post, if you don't mind." Morgan shifted uneasily, his phone still in hand. "It's just, we were frustrated." Cameron stood there, silent but resolute. Keanu met his gaze, offering a small nod that he hoped conveyed, "I have your back." Morgan finally thrust his phone forward. On the screen was a social media post with a startling number of shares and comments. It read, "The once great Horizon Skylark has sunk to hiring staff who have no idea how to maintain appropriate standards. We've never been so disrespected. Avoid this place if you want proper service." The language was veiled enough to bypass explicit hate speech filters, but the subtext was crystal clear to anyone who bothered to read between the lines. Keanu's grip tightened around the phone. "You believe you've been disrespected by a senior staff member who's been here 5 years with a stellar record?" Elena tried to retort. "We didn't realize he was senior staff. It's just that we expect a certain standard." Keanu interrupted, returning the phone to Morgan. "Tell me, how long have you been staying in this hotel?" Morgan cleared his throat. "Nearly 10 years. And in all that time, has Cameron here," he gestured to the employee, "ever once given you subpar service or treated you with disrespect?" Both guests fell silent. A muscle in Morgan's jaw twitched. Keanu crossed his arms. "Because from what I've seen, he's nothing but polite, skilled at his job, and," he paused for emphasis, "well, he deserves far more respect than you're giving him." Elena's mouth opened and closed wordlessly as though she couldn't find the right angle to spin the situation. Cameron remained behind the desk, eyes calm yet resolute. Keanu exhaled. It was time to lay down the truth. "I should mention," he said carefully, "that I'm not just some random guest passing through. I recently purchased the Horizon Skylark Hotel. So yes, I'm the owner." Their reactions were immediate. Morgan's face went pale, and Elena looked as if she might faint on the spot. "Wait, you're the new owner?" Morgan stammered. "We had no idea. Look, we can talk about this. We're big fans of your work." Elena tried to muster a gracious smile. "Yes, huge fans. We loved your last film. We never meant to cause trouble." Keanu ignored their flattery. "You caused trouble for Cameron, not me. You posted about him to your followers, likely painting him in a demeaning light. Now that you know I own this hotel, you suddenly want to discuss it?" Morgan attempted a fumbled apology. "It was just frustration talking. We'd happily delete the post and—" "I'm sure you would," Keanu said softly, "because you're worried about damaging your own reputation if I publicly addressed it. But how do you plan to make this right for Cameron?" Elena shuffled her feet. "We'll apologize, of course, and we'll say nice things about him in a new post. Maybe a donation or something? Anything you need." Cameron glanced at Keanu, who gave him a small nod. This was the moment for Cameron to decide how he wanted the matter resolved. The desk attendant cleared his throat. "I appreciate an apology, but apologies without meaningful change don't help much. If you're truly sorry, you'll take down the post, acknowledge your mistake, and learn to treat every staff member, every person, with respect, regardless of appearances." Silence stretched between them, thick as the tension in the air. Morgan and Elena exchanged panicked looks before mumbling a quick, stumbling apology. Morgan pulled out his phone, presumably to delete or amend the post. Keanu softened his voice. I also plan to have a conversation with you and the management team in the morning to discuss how we handle incidents like this going forward. For now, I think Cameron has offered a fair path. Remove your defamatory post, write a sincere apology, and commit to treating people better. Elena nodded rapidly. Yes, absolutely. We're sorry. We can do that. Not long after, the couple hurried off to their suite, presumably to craft a digital apology. The lobby once again fell into an almost meditative quiet. The clock above the desk now read 2:25 a.m. Keanu glanced at Cameron, noticing the tension slowly melting from his posture. Thank you, Cameron said, his tone reflecting a mixture of relief and lingering nerves. I didn't expect to have someone come to my defense like that. Keanu offered a modest shrug. You shouldn't have needed anyone to come to your defense in the first place. That's what we're going to fix. Cameron's eyebrows rose slightly. Fix? Keanu smiled, though fatigue weighed on his features. I bought this hotel without a public announcement because I wanted to see how it really runs, the good and the bad. I've seen enough tonight to know we need to set clearer policies for dealing with guest harassment. No more allowing staff to be bullied just because a guest is influential or wealthy. We'll make it a standard to protect our employees and hold people accountable. Let's call it a zero-tolerance policy for hateful behavior. Cameron's lips curved into a hopeful grin. That would mean a lot to everyone here. We've had problems like this before. Most times, management just apologizes to the guests and brushes it under the rug. I filed complaints, but nothing changed, Cameron said. It will now, Keanu assured him. Early the next morning, Keanu was in one of the hotel's conference rooms. Even with just 3 hours of sleep, he felt energized. Word had spread among the staff about the late-night confrontation, and curiosity buzzed in the air. He met with several department heads, housekeeping, room service, security, and front desk. Many of them looked uneasy, as though they worried they'd be reprimanded for unknown infractions. Some had only found out moments ago that Keanu Reeves was, in fact, their new employer. Let's keep it casual, Keanu said, gesturing for them to take seats around the oval table. I want to hear from you. We need to ensure that incidents like the one last night are handled with fairness, both for guests and for staff. A hush fell. Then, a bold voice from the housekeeping manager, Zoe, spoke up. We've lost some good employees because they felt unprotected. A handful of regulars felt entitled to treat staff however they wanted, and the managers rarely backed us up. Heads nodded around the table. Zoe continued, Cameron isn't the first person to deal with hostility. He's just one of the few who stayed even after multiple run-ins. Keanu leaned forward. I'm establishing a new policy. If a guest abuses or discriminates against staff, I want it documented, and I want leadership to take immediate action. There must be consequences. Our employees shouldn't live in fear just because someone has money or social media clout. Cameron, who had been invited to the meeting, cleared his throat. And if a guest tries to sabotage an employee's reputation online, that's on my list. Keanu replied, tapping the sheet of paper in front of him. We'll monitor social media mentions involving the hotel. If we see malicious or discriminatory attacks, we'll respond publicly to defend our employees, politely but firmly. A small ripple of excitement seemed to travel around the room. This was no ordinary corporate chat. The staff sensed real change. Later that same day, an unexpected visitor arrived at the Horizon Skylark, Trent Sullivan, one of the previous owners who had sold the property to Keanu. He rushed in, red-faced, briefcase in hand, demanding to speak with whoever was in charge. When he spotted Keanu by the reception desk, he marched over. Mr. Reeves, Trent said, voice tight. We need to discuss the publication fiasco that I heard occurred last night. The Prestons are longtime clients of the Skylark. They're threatening to blame us, the former owners, for creating a hostile environment. Keanu studied him calmly. The only hostile environment created was by that couple who disparaged an excellent employee because they deemed him not up to standard. Trent pressed his lips together. So you're siding against loyal, high-paying guests? This is not how we built the hotel's reputation. Keanu sighed, crossing his arms. It's precisely that outdated notion that money can excuse terrible behavior that leads to problems like this. If your reputation was built on appeasing bullies, maybe it's time for a new approach. Trent fumbled for words, then tried another angle. But do you realize how damaging public conflict can be? The news is sniffing around, social media's ablaze. Keanu raised a hand to silence him. And if we handle this correctly, the Horizon Skylark will be known for championing fairness and respect, which is a far better reputation than turning a blind eye. Realizing he was outmatched, Trent shook his head in exasperation. Well, you'll see how complicated it can get. This place isn't run on ideals alone. Yes, it's run on people, Keanu answered quietly. And if we don't treat people right, we have nothing. I'm implementing new standards to protect staff and ensure that genuine hospitality flourishes. With that, Trent's shoulders slumped, and he walked away in defeat, muttering about how things used to be simpler. Words spread quickly among employees and even certain segments of the public. Emails and messages poured in, from rival hotels, from staff at other establishments, from guests who supported the idea of a more equitable hospitality experience. Keanu took it all in stride, delegating tasks and drafting a set of official guidelines he called the Fair Hospitality Accord. Each page spelled out the rights of employees, the responsibilities of guests, and the commitment of management to uphold them. A few days later, Cameron had the honor of placing a framed copy of the accord on the main lobby wall, right next to a blooming arrangement of lilies. As he hung it, several staff members clapped softly, and passers-by stopped to read. Morgan and Elena, having written an apology and privately spoken to Cameron, quietly checked out without fanfare. No big confrontation, no final meltdown, just a subdued farewell. The staff who had witnessed their previous arrogance noted how subdued they had become, as though they finally grasped that money and status didn't excuse cruelty. One evening, when the hustle and bustle of the day had receded, Keanu found Cameron in the lobby again, arranging flowers. This time, they were purple orchids, delicate and graceful. "Orchids tonight?" Keanu asked, smiling. Cameron grinned. "Yes, trying something new. They remind me of resilience." Keanu nodded, then lowered his voice. "How are you feeling about everything?" "It's been quite the whirlwind." Cameron's expression turned thoughtful. "I'm grateful. It's not every day that someone in your position actually stands up for the staff. You changed more than just one hotel policy, you changed how we feel coming to work." Keanu hesitated, then answered. "I didn't do it alone. You and the rest of the staff were already here, holding this place together. I just gave you the support you deserved." Cameron placed the last orchid into its vase, a small smile lighting his face. "That's the best kind of leadership, Mr. Reeves. What can we learn from this story? It's a reminder that kindness and respect should never be optional, even in the world of luxury and wealth. Often, it's the quiet acts of standing up for someone or refusing to let money overshadow decency that spark lasting change. It only took a few minutes of confrontation that night, but it led to a transformation of the entire hotel's culture, and perhaps, in time, the culture of many other establishments as well. And now, we'd love to hear from you. Have you ever witnessed or experienced discrimination or poor treatment when you least expected it? How did you handle it, or did you, like Keanu at first, watch silently, not sure if intervening would make a difference? Share your thoughts below. Your experiences matter, and discussing them can light the spark for real change. Finally, if you found value in this story, if it reminded you that every voice has the power to uphold fairness, please hit subscribe so you won't miss our next narrative. We bring stories that highlight the power of empathy, the importance of listening, and how one individual can truly make a difference. If this story moved you, consider spreading kindness today. It could be as simple as saying a heartfelt thank you to a service worker, offering genuine praise, or standing up when you see someone being treated unfairly. Because in a world that sometimes overlooks decency, a single moment of courage can become the cornerstone for something bigger, a lasting shift toward respect and understanding.